Okay, so first of all, I've got to make an apology. This is a Prezi presentation, and it does make you feel dizzy. So anyone who has drank too much last night, just close your eyes, but we'll get through it. So this presentation is about Loughborough University's approach to developing informal learning spaces and the journey that we've taken so far. And we realised that we needed to get a better understanding of what students' views were on our current provision. And before I get into the detail of the data collection, to give you some context of Loughborough University, we have approximately 17,000 students spread across 10 schools, although that will soon be 11 schools when our Loughborough University campus opens at the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park in September. Challenging project, I won't even go there, but that will make the 11th school. We're the UK's largest green campus, and we have approximately 438 acres, and that does include a wood as well within the campus. And we have approximately 5,500 students in halls. The campus is a very stretched campus. It's very long. It is split up into east, central and west, and it will take students about 30 minutes to walk from one end to the other. There we go. Feeling dizzy yet? Okay, so the governance of learning spaces is provided through a project management board, and for us it's the Learning and Teaching Space PMB, and that's chaired by the Deputy Chief Operating Officer. I act as a client and I work for the Corporate Services Department, and we have the Pro-Vice Chancellor for Teaching who's the sponsor. We also have a number of stakeholders, including deans from various schools, and representation from our IT services, from our library, and I think most importantly from our student union. And the latter three were involved in this data collection project. So we wanted to find out what, why and how. So if we go into the what, there we go. And although we have invested heavily over the last 10 years or so in developing formal learning spaces, I think it equates to about 11 million in academic buildings and teaching rooms. I think we have largely neglected our informal learning areas. So as I said before, it's the interested stakeholders who are involved in the data collection, and they're the ones that ultimately support these areas and will be involved in future developments. So how we did this, we conducted structured interviews in various spaces across campus, and we did this on two separate occasions. We did it once during the semester and once during the exam period. So that was just to get a balanced view. And in total, we conducted 265 interviews. So students were asked the following questions. Why did they decide to use this space? And we wanted to know if geographical location was a key requirement, or whether there was a requirement to be linked to their school, to their halls, or to their timetabled activities, or whether there were more design or quality factors involved in their selection criteria. We wanted to know what learning they were doing, what activities were taking place. Were they working on coursework? Were they working on revision? Were they working on dissertations? Working collaboratively, socialising, sleeping? And actually we did find quite a bit of sleeping. We wanted to establish frequency of use, and what technology is used in these spaces, how informal learning areas could be improved, and other qualitative comments about spaces across campus. Oh, sorry. Hold on there. So we selected a range of different types of study spaces, and that included individual library, study booths, collaborative tables, centrally IT managed spaces, Student bedrooms, we didn't actually conduct the interviews in the bedrooms, I have to say. Informal learning areas and social spaces, and just dwell spaces as well. So we did collect data from various different areas, and also we looked at a diverse set of rooms that had both positive and negative feedback. And one of the rooms that I surveyed, one of our IT labs, is also known as the S Building Dungeon, and it's in the bowels of the building. It's disgusting, it's hideous, and it's heavily used. So actually it's one of the reasons why we wanted to understand more about that. So we're going to the iPhone next. There we go. So I don't think there are any surprises about the high percentages for revision and coursework given the time when we conducted the interviews. Which were in the semester and during the exam period. And the results for other included working collaboratively, working on Facebook, watching a movie, writing CVs, applications, research activities, those sort of things. And I interviewed a student in the S Building Dungeon and asked him what he was doing, and whether it's because I turned up in a suit with a clipboard, but he told me he was working on his dissertation. He was watching Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a great movie. So I said again, really? And he said, no, I'm definitely working on my dissertation. Maths student, can't see the connection, but hey. There we go. So the next questions we asked were why students selected these particular spaces and what the frequency of use was. And we received a good range of responses. So we have 27% combined wanting informal learning space close to the home department. We had 13% facilities and building, and that could include software, amenities, printing, close to school reception, or importantly, close to their tutors. We had 26% for other, and that included the need for 24/7, natural light, the need for desk space for group working, a place to hide, which actually I think is a really interesting comment that students feel the need to hide, and accessibility. And it's also worth noting that library study spaces polarised opinions as well. You had the library supporters, and then you had the library studiers, who I think, because they couldn't guarantee they could get a collaborative table or they could get a PC, they just decided not to bother with the library, and they started to hate it. 24% of respondents wanted a quiet area to study, and I think that will inform our thinking in the future as to how we manage our spaces and the areas that we allocate to informal learning. And moving on to frequency, most students interviewed access these areas on a weekly and daily basis, with a combined total of 85%. So we all know and understand that technology is integral to the student experience, so there were no surprises with the technology that students are using to support their activities. But what's interesting is the range of technologies they were using. They were using multiple devices. And looking around the tables yesterday, it was interesting to note that we were all doing the same. You know, we're leading by example, and if you take Tony, Kelly, 2 telephones, Tony, we all had laptops as well, and that's what students are wanting. So next question was, how could the room be improved further? We expected a range of results given the diversity and the quality of the rooms that we surveyed. 18% of students wanted more PCs, and this, I think, is a trend reflected across many universities, where there's an expectation that because of the bring your own device agenda, there will be a reduction in PCs. But Loughborough has clearly gone against this, and when we renovated our library a couple of years ago, we increased our provision of PCs significantly, and we're also working on a project now where we are trying to identify the need for another 100 lab IT room for students' use. And that can be a challenge with flexible tables and issues with floor boxes. And I don't know about any other institution, but I know that Loughborough floor boxes are the first to be value engineered out of a project. But it's something that we need to consider for both formal and informal spaces in the future. 7% wanted larger desk spaces, and that's for increased collaboration. And again, that can be a challenge because of our utilisation stats that we report on to our estate management reporting figures. And the largest figure was 54% for other, and that included a range of responses from natural light. And at the end of the day, students aren't lab rats, and every project that I've worked on, especially in formal learning spaces, you work with the architect, and the first thing they do is take the windows away because they think we need to control the light, and actually we don't. Students need a connection with the outside world. Make the room more inspiring, vending, better access, better quality, more open plan, more seclusion, but more importantly, more of these type of areas. And these comments were also echoed in our last question. And overall, there were generally high levels of satisfaction with our provision. And even students that were interviewed in the S Building dungeon and some of our other grot spots that we have across campus. And we've never hidden them. In fact, we did have a strategy at one point that we thought we should start allocating our Senate and our council meetings to the grottiest lecture theatre, just to be able to get some funding to develop them in the future. But I think the message is loud and clear that students want more of these type of spaces. Right, hold on. We're going in. There we go. So other data that we've used, over the years we've run a number of different surveys. So we've started analysing that data. And we also last summer visited a number of other universities. We went to UCL, we went to visit Mike, University of Arts, James, and then we decided to go and visit James again at Birmingham, and then we went on to Aston. And that was the aim was to look what other universities have implemented, what worked well and what didn't work so well. And actually a good example from UCL, when we met with Mike and his colleague, the opening gambit was space is a real premium here, which you would expect because you're in the centre of London. But actually we found that they provided some really spacious areas which were open and light, and that they really understood the importance of space. Another example, at Aston, we witnessed students queuing for loanable laptops in an informal learning area within the library, and it was such a valued service that they were literally queuing, waiting for these laptops to recharge, and then they would run, and the first person would manage to get the laptop. And actually it's something that we don't currently have at Loughborough, but we're looking to implement within our library as well. And this workshop, actually this is a presentation that I wrote for a workshop that we ran in April, so this actually should read past tense now. We got various stakeholders together from Ord, from UCISA, from Sconnell, which is the library element, and we had representation from SCOMS. Simon, Ricardo and Nigel attended. And that was just to work through some scenarios which I think we found really useful. About there. So lessons learned. Students use informal learning spaces for a range of activities, but they also need areas to socialise, where they can meet friends, where they can relax between lectures, where they can catch up, and as I said earlier, and where they can sleep. They need to have a place to feel comfortable and more crucially, to feel safe. And that's something that I've been working on as a strategy with our security department. And depending on what students are studying will often dictate how they use the space. And an example of that, our computer science department have very different needs from our art students. Art students want larger desk spaces for collaboration. And how we cater for these different disciplines, do we specialise, do we zone informal learning spaces? These are we don't have all the answers yet, and these are sort of things that we're working through. Location was the single biggest reason why students choose a particularly informal learning space. I'm not saying that Loughborough students are lazy, although we do find that from a timetabling perspective that they really do want to be allocated very close to their school. But they often don't actually have time to walk from one end of the campus to the other if it's 30 minutes, and we have a 10-minute changeover period between lectures as well. So they do tend to choose a room that's closest to them, whether it suits their needs or not. A recent survey has shown that some students aren't aware of the informal learning spaces that we've got. So I think communication and marketing is key. And there's no point in having some of these great learning spaces if students don't know where to find them. And we have addressed that last year. We created an informal learning map, and then we overlaid our IT provision onto that. And then we also put vending facilities, and I will update that again over the summer, and it's an online map as well. So within every informal learning space, students expect Wi-Fi, PCs, Macs, specialist equipment, printing facilities. They bring your own device, but conversely, they don't want to bring their own device in certain cases. They don't want to have to lug them around campus all day. And either way, expectations of students on ICT are growing, and we need to think of new ways to meet these increasing demands. So stakeholder engagement, students have loads of great ideas. They know what they want, they know what works, they know what doesn't. And ultimately, they're the customer, they're the business partner, they're the stakeholder, and they need to be included from the very start. And it's something that we've done with formal learning spaces for a number of years, but I think we're still playing catch up with informal learning areas. And any informal learning space can have the best design, the most expensive and comfortable furniture. But it was clear from visiting other campuses and from our own experience that space, if it doesn't have an owner, it won't succeed. And we need to ensure that facilities that are working in the space is not being abused and neglected. It needs looking after, so it needs to be both strategically and operationally managed. Go. So we've looked at lessons learnt so far, and what can we conclude? We now have a better understanding of what students want and value of their spaces, and it's critical to the student experience. But there will be challenges moving forward, and I think for us the major challenge will be funding. And I know that Aaron and I over the last couple of weeks have been working through our budget submission, and it's not looking healthy, and we've got to find different ways of developing these spaces as cost effectively as we can. And I think it's also about convincing senior management that this is a priority, and that's really difficult. And although we have our Pro-Vice Chancellor for Teaching as the sponsor on our Learning and Teaching Space PMB, at the end of the day, informal learning spaces don't get the priority that they should have. And I think the second thing is space constraints. I mentioned UCL, and they believe that they have space constraints being in the centre of London. But actually, I mean, I managed the space team for the last 5 years, and because we were within the estates department, our utilisation figures are so important and so considered that we actually have to manipulate our figures every so often. And I probably shouldn't be saying that, but it's so important. And even when we've got, the 438 acres, space is a real struggle, and it costs money. And I think we, as a part of our COMA charge, are charging at £201 per square metre. So informal learning spaces are the first ones to get value engineered out of a project. And finally, how do we continue to evaluate these spaces? Well, I've got an online survey at the moment open. It's due to close on Friday, called Rate Our Space, and it's asking students to rate our formal learning spaces, our informal learning spaces, our IT provision, our printing provision. And this is something that we will continue. I mean, at the moment, I think we've got over 1,000 responses. We've offered an iPad mini, and that always helps to to increase your response rate. But it's something that we need to continue to evaluate. And so if there are any universities that have got any really good spaces for informal learning, myself and my team will be really interested in paying you a visit. And equally, we're happy to share the data that we've collected so far with you if anyone is involved in this type of project. I'm nearly there. So informal learning spaces are as important or more important to students as formal learning spaces. Now, this is not a debate for now, but it is interesting and it's food for thought. And finally, I wanted to leave you with a comment that was made from a student that I think really summarises why we need these spaces. So informal learning spaces are really important to me as they provide valuable spaces to collaborate, to engage, to socialise, to surf, to relax, to create and eat chocolate with other students. We need more of these type of spaces. So if nothing else, at least we've proved that with our journey, our Loughborough University students have somewhere to eat chocolate. We've done something right. And that's it.